As the U.S. and China resume high-level trade talks Wednesday, President Trump sees himself with the upper hand given China's lagging economic growth, but there is pressure for Mr. Trump and his administration to cut a deal too. Chinese tariffs imposed to counter U.S. levies are unpopular with leading business groups and have hit regions and constituencies that Mr. Trump counts among his staunchest supporters, including soybean farmers in the Great Plains, auto workers in the Midwest and oil industry workers in the Dakotas and Texas. In a measure of the issue's significance, Mr. Trump mentioned China 18 times in a speech to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual conference 2 weeks ago, offering assurances that a deal was within reach. "Wait until you see what happens with China," he told the crowd in New Orleans. "They're already back ordering, right? They're going to order, and they've already started." Mr. Trump won the White House partly on a pledge to renegotiate trade deals with the aim of protecting American workers, a promise that had bipartisan appeal. If Mr. Trump's optimistic projection proves correct, he stands to secure a big victory, one that his predecessors, despite criticizing China's trade practices, were unable to achieve. In the past 2 years, Mr. Trump has brought countries to the negotiating table and created real momentum in trade conversations across the globe, said Senator David Perdue R. Now, we have an opportunity to get results during these ongoing conversations with China. But failure to reach a deal carries a risk not only for Mr. Trump, but for the Republican Party, said Mary Lovely, an economics professor at Syracuse University. Republicans in Congress aren't going to find additional tariffs really a winner back home, and they are already facing concern in large parts of the country over the impact of the partial government shutdown, she said. More tariffs and failure to get a deal will ultimately seem to people like further failure of the government. Wall Street volatility has emerged as yet another source of pressure. Concerns that the U.S.-China trade fight may drag on indefinitely helped fuel a market sell-off late last year, exacerbated by Mr. Trump's tweet that he remained a tariff man. As stocks swooned, Mr. Trump anxiously called advisors both inside and outside the White House, seeking reassurances that his stance on China wasn't driving the sell-off, people close to the president say. He ultimately dismissed market fluctuations as part of a natural correction. The talks are set to begin Wednesday morning and conclude Thursday afternoon. In a sign of their importance, Mr. Trump is scheduled to meet with the head of the Chinese delegation, Vice Premier Liu He, this week. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said he doesn't yet see tariffs as having a visible mark on either the U.S. or China, but higher, long-lasting tariffs could in the long run lead to a less productive economy around the world. Photo Getty. The delegations will meet in the Eisenhower Executive Office building next to the White House, which would make it easy for Mr. Trump to drop by himself to see how things are progressing should he choose to do so. The talks are aimed at staving off the Trump administration's plans to raise tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods to 25%, up from the 10% levies imposed last year. Without a deal, or an agreement to extend talks, the tariff increase will go into effect at 12:01 a.m. on March 2. Despite Mr. Trump's hopes for a deal, the two sides remain far apart. Several of Mr. Trump's top advisors say the Chinese have shown little sign of a change in course since Mr. Trump and China's President Xi Jinping first agreed in Buenos Aires last month to resume negotiations. Now, China hawks and business groups alike are concerned that Mr. Trump will settle too easily in seeking a quick win. While business groups generally oppose the White House's use of tariffs to pressure China, they are arguing that Beijing needs to halt the subsidies and pressure to transfer technology that have harmed U.S. firms. We now have an historic opportunity through these talks to make progress on issues so critical to manufacturers in the United States, said Jay Timmons, president of the National Association of Manufacturers. That's why we want to see the two sides negotiate real results that address these challenges and reach a strong, enforceable bilateral trade agreement.